I want you to try and hold two very contradictory images in your head for a second. On one side, imagine a heavy stone Gothic cathedral.
Mm.
It's ancient, smells like incense, and it's filled with the very structured, very solemn tradition of a Catholic Mass for the dead.
The Requiem.
Right, the Requiem, heavy stuff. Now, on the other side, picture a bamboo forest in the mist. It's fluid, it's about nature, paradox, going with the flow.
The world of the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
Two worlds that really shouldn't fit in the same room.
They shouldn't. But today, we are doing a deep dive into the work of a composer who didn't just put them in the same room. He basically smashed them together at high velocity to see what would happen.
I mean, it's a fascinating collision.
We're talking about David Peterson and his piece, A Taoist Requiem.
And you're right to frame it that way as a contradiction. What we're looking at here is an attempt to fuse the Western idea of mourning, which is often very linear, very judgment-based, but with Eastern mysticism, which is all about cycles.
And the result is a bit of a mind-bender. We've got the full score notes here. We have Peterson's personal dedication to his muse, Mandy, and we have some pretty dense structural analysis transcripts. And our mission today is to figure out exactly how he pulls this off. We want to decode the specific, musical machinery he uses to trigger these massive universal feelings of grief and renewal.
And we should probably mention he's doing all of this with one hand tied behind his back.
That is the first thing that made me stop and just double-check the documents. I'm looking at the personnel list for this piece. It's huge.
It is.
You've got sopranos, altos, baritone, bass, a men's chorus, a women's chorus. When you see that on a page, especially for a requiem, you expect words.
You expect the Dies Irae, the Day of Wrath.
Exactly. You expect to be told about judgment and mercy. But in this entire 25-minute piece, not a single word.
That really is the initial aha moment for most people. A traditional requiem is almost entirely defined by its text. The words are a roadmap for the listener. They tell you, okay, now we are sad, or now we are terrified, or now we are hopeful.
So when you strip the words away, you're taking away the map.
Precisely. Peterson creates what we call a wordless choir. The singers are using vocalizations, oohs, ahs, hums, but no language. And by doing that, he creates a vacuum. He forces the music itself, the harmony, the texture, the dynamics, to do 100% of the emotional heavy lifting.
He talks in the notes about wanting to create an otherworldly atmosphere, and I think removing language is step one of that.
It has to be.
If you hear Latin, you think church. If you hear English, you think song. If you hear just sound, you're somewhere else entirely.
You're in a liminal space, and that's where the Taoist part really comes in. He wants to bridge that gap between the familiar and the mystical.
And he does that using some very specific musical tools. The notes mention a blend of tonality and modal scales.
Right.
Okay, let's pause there. Because tonality versus modality sounds like something from a textbook that costs $300. For the listener who just enjoys a good playlist, can we break down what that actually sounds like to the ear?
Sure. Think of tonality as the ground floor of Western music. It's the major and minor keys we're all used to. It feels grounded. It has a home base.
Okay.
When a song ends, you know it's over because it resolves to that home note. That represents the Western Catholic structured side of this equation.
So tonality is the solid ground.
Right. Then you have modal scales. These are much older. They have roots in ancient Greek music, medieval chants, Eastern folk music. And they don't follow those same rules of gravity. They feel a bit floating. They don't always point to a clear home.
So by mixing them, he's creating a sound that feels familiar but slightly wrong.
Wrong might be too strong, but definitely unmoored. It sounds structured enough that your brain recognizes it as music, but it's just strange enough to make you feel like the laws of physics have shifted a little bit.
It builds a bridge between the known and the unknown.
Exactly.
Which is pretty appropriate for a piece about death. You're standing on the edge of the unknown.
Yeah.
But it's not just the scales that make this so intense. The notes describe the texture as a wild ride.
That is putting it mildly. Peterson relies so heavily on contrast, he doesn't let you get comfortable.
No.
He shifts violently between these stark, almost terrifyingly empty moments, maybe just a solo instrument, and then without warning, he slams you into these huge, dense, layered sections where the whole ensemble is just screaming.
It's not background music. You can't fold laundry to this.
No, it demands active listening. It's meant to be overwhelming. And speaking of demanding, we have to talk about the men's chorus.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the research. I was looking at the score notes for the vocal ranges, and I legitimately thought it was a typo.
It looks like a mistake, doesn't it?
Peterson writes notes for the bass section that are, well, they aren't there. They're effectively too low to be sung by a human male. They're just off the bottom of the chart.
It's physically impossible for the vast majority of singers to hit those frequencies with any real tone.
So, why do it? Is he just a bad composer? Did he forget how human throats work?
No, this is intentional. And this is where the philosophy starts to bleed into the actual ink on the page.
Okay.
He calls this a koan.
A koan, a Zen riddle.
Exactly. In Zen practice, a koan is a question or a statement that you can't solve with logic. Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
Right.
It's meant to exhaust the analytical mind, to break your reliance on logic so you can reach a different kind of understanding.
So how does that apply to a bass singer standing on stage trying to hit a note he physically can't reach?
It changes the singer's intent. If I give you a note you can hit, you just hit it. You execute the task. You succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But if I give you a note I know you can't reach, but it demands you try, you aren't just singing anymore. You are reaching.
You're struggling.
You're struggling against a boundary. You're confronting a limitation. Peterson wants that sound, or rather that feeling of reaching into the void.
Wow.
It embodies the frustration of grief. We want answers. We want the person back. We reach, but we can't grasp.
That is actually incredibly cool and also probably really frustrating for the choir during rehearsal.
Oh, I'm sure there are some complaints.
Mm-hmm.
But the acoustic effect is this guttural, straining vibration that you just feel in your chest. It's the sound of human effort against the impossible.
So we've got impossible notes, we've got floating scales, wordless vocals. Let's look at the map of this journey. The piece is about 25 minutes long, divided into two massive chunks, Section 1 and Section 2.
The yin and the yang.
Section 1 is the yin. The notes describe this as darkness, receptivity.
And in the context of a requiem, death. This section is focused on the end of things. It's the descent.
Right. And even though there are no lyrics, Peterson gives the movements titles based on his own translation of the Tao Te Ching, which, by the way, let's just acknowledge the effort there. Translating the Tao Te Ching yourself before composing a requiem based on it, that's a level of commitment I do not have.
He's certainly not a dabbler. He wants to get to the source. And these titles, they serve as signposts for us. Since we don't have words, we need a hint of where we are.
So you get titles like Emptiness, Futile Words, and Death, Withered and Dry.
Yeah.
Futile Words stands out to me. It feels a bit cheeky for a wordless choir.
It is a bit ironic.
Like he's saying, see, I told you words wouldn't help.
I think it's also profound. In the face of deep grief, what good are words? I'm sorry for your loss. They're in a better place.
Yeah.
It all just sounds like noise. Peterson is acknowledging that language fails us.
But the movement that really seems to anchor this yin section, the one that feels like the emotional peak of the darkness, is part 4. It's titled, And Strong Rains Do Not Last the Day.
The storm.
Yeah, the storm. The notes describe this as a storm of dissonance. For people who don't know music theory, what is dissonance actually doing to our brains when we hear it?
Dissonance creates physical tension. When two notes are too close together in pitch, the sound waves literally clash. It creates a beating sound. Your brain desperately wants them to resolve, to slide apart into something harmonious.
It craves that resolution.
It does. And Peterson says no. He refuses. He just stacks these clashing notes on top of each other, layer after layer. It mimics that overwhelming, chaotic feeling of acute grief.
Yeah.
That moment when the world just feels wrong.
But the title implies a promise, right? Strong rains do not last the day. Even the worst storm runs out of rain.
That's the core Taoist view of nature.
Right.
A hurricane is violent, yes, but it can't last forever. It burns itself out.
Violence is temporary.
Right.
And how does Section I end after that storm?
Silence.
And you don't just mean the track ends. I mean, looking at the score, silence is written in as a structural component.
It's a very bold move.
Yeah.
In a concert hall, silence is heavy. It's almost louder than the music. You hear the person next to you shifting in their seat.
You hear your own heartbeat.
Exactly. Peterson uses that. We've gone through the withered and dry, we've survived the strong rains, and now, nothing. The void.
The emptiness promised in the first movement.
Most composers would rush to fill that space because we get uncomfortable with silence. We check our phones. We want the next stimulation. Peterson forces you to just sit in it.
Which feels like a dangerous place to leave an audience.
Yeah.
Here's some trauma and some nothingness. Good night.
If he ended there, it would be a tragedy. But that's just the end of Section 1. The page turns.
We move to Section 2, the yang.
The shift to light. Active energy. Renewal.
And the way he starts this section, Honestly, the imagery is just beautiful. Part 5 is titled, A Tree as Large as Your Embrace Grows from a Tiny Seedling.
I love this movement. It is an absolute masterclass in orchestration mimicking biology.
How so? How does an orchestra mimic a tree?
Well, think about a seedling. It's small, fragile, singular. The movement starts with just a tiny seed of a melody, maybe a full of woodwind. Very simple, very quiet.
Okay, so it starts vulnerable.
Exactly. Then he starts to layer. He adds another instrument, then another. The texture gets thicker. The harmony gets wider. It's like watching a time-lapse video of a forest growing.
He's building the sound up from the ground.
Ring by ring, branch by branch. It's the exact opposite of the withered and dry from the first half. And notice the pacing. It's not an explosion.
Yeah.
You don't snap your fingers and suddenly you're over your grief.
Yeah.
It's a process, a slow, steady, organic growth.
That's a very healthy way to look at recovery. But the next part, part 6, tackles something more internal. It's titled, Becoming Sick of Sickness Throws Off Sickness.
Try saying that 5 times fast.
I won't. But conceptually, this feels like we're moving from the external world of the tree to the internal world, the mind.
Yes, this is about the mental state. We've all been there. When you're stuck in a loop of anxiety or sadness and you just get fed up, you reach a saturation point.
To get sick of being sick.
Exactly. But Peterson doesn't just play peaceful spa music here to represent the solution. He dramatizes the struggle to get there. The notes say it starts with a cacophony.
Chaos again. I thought we left the storm behind.
It's a different kind of chaos. It's the monkey mind. Rhythms are out of sync. Instruments are chattering over each other. It's that noise inside your head at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep.
So how does he fix it? Musically.
He uses a technique called entrainment.
Entrainment? That sounds like something from physics.
It is, basically. It's the phenomenon where independent rhythmic systems synchronize, like pendulum clocks on a wall eventually swinging together.
Huh.
Peterson systematically forces these chaotic rhythms to align. He takes the noise and organizes it. The dissonance slowly, methodically dissipates into unity.
I really like that. He's not saying peace is the absence of noise. He's saying peace is the ordering of noise.
Precisely. You don't eliminate the sickness by ignoring it. You throw it off by taking control of it. You march it into a melody.
That is deep. But here's where he pulls the rug out from under us. Part 7, sometimes gain through loss. The notes mention something called the ghost technique here. What is that?
This is the emotional pivot point of the whole Requiem. Remember those sad, withered themes from Section 1, the death music?
Hard to forget.
He brings them back.
Wait, I thought we were in the renewal section. Why are we bringing back the death music?
Because you don't just get over loss. That's a Western fairy tale. We want to move on, close the chapter, leave the past behind. Peterson is saying, no. The ghost comes with you.
But does it sound the same? Or is it just a reprise?
It sounds completely different. He takes that same melody, the DNA of the griefs, but he reharmonizes it. He puts it in a totally new context. The notes say it becomes brighter, even playful.
So the memory's the same, but the way we feel about it has changed.
Exactly. Think about losing someone close to you. At first, the memory of them hurts. It's sharp. It's the withered and dry melody.
Right.
But years later, that same memory, the exact same melody, makes you smile. It becomes fond. You have gained through loss.
That is, wow, that's a really sophisticated way to treat a melody. You aren't deleting the file, you're rewriting the code around it.
You're integrating it. And that leads us to the grand finale, part 8, the full circle.
The final movement is just titled Emptiness again.
It mirrors the very first movement. We are back at the start.
But we aren't, really, because we've been through the ringer.
No, we're in the same place, but we are different. The notes describe ethereal harmonies supporting the original themes. It's a return, but on a higher spiral.
There's a quote from Peterson in the source materials about this specific moment. I have it here. He writes, "In the crucible of grief, the problem of emptiness somehow becomes its own solution."
That is the central paradox of the piece. We spend the whole time in our whole lives really fearing the void, fearing the silence left by people who are gone. But the Taoist view is that the void is a container. A cup has to be empty to be filled.
So if you don't face the emptiness, you can't have the renewal. The emptiness is necessary.
Correct. The emptiness isn't the villain. It's the construction site.
And to seal this whole concept of circles and spirals, there's one final tiny detail in the score that I absolutely loved. The very last note.
The flute.
It ends on a solo flute, and if you check the frequency,
it is the exact same note, pitch perfect, as the very first note of the Requiem.
It creates a literal loop.
If you put this album on repeat, the end flows seamlessly into the beginning. It implies that the cycle never stops. Life, death, grief, renewal, it starts again.
But, and this is the key, when you hear that note the second time, after going through the storm and the tree and the ghost, it feels different.
You can't step in the same river twice. The note is the same, but the listener has changed. The experience has altered your perception of that single tone.
That is the genius of combining the Requiem with Taoism. A traditional Requiem has a period at the end. Rest in peace. Amen. Done.
And Taoism has a comma. Flow. Continue.
Now, I know what you're thinking. David Peterson sounds like a very serious, very mystical guy who probably lives in a cave and only eats organic broth.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
But we have to zoom out for a second. Because we looked at his other work in the source pile, and the guy is all over the map.
Eclectic is an understatement. A Taoist Requiem is just one distinct flavor of his personality.
I mean, I'm seeing notes here on Martian archaeology.
Yes. He's hugely into hard sci-fi. He writes these elaborate world-building documents about future colonies and ancient alien civilizations, and then composes music for them.
And then, this one is my favorite, The Flapper with a Migraine.
Best title ever.
It fuses jazz, roaring 20s aesthetics, and headache imagery.
It captures that frantic neon energy of the jazz age, but with a modern, dissonant twist. It's erratic and pulsing.
So we have Catholic requiems, ancient Chinese philosophy, Martian colonies, and flapper jazz.
Is he just throwing darts at a board? Or is there a method to this madness?
It seems random, but I think there's a pattern. I like to think of him as a cultural alchemist.
An alchemist. I like that.
He takes base elements that have no business being together, Martians and archaeology, Taoism and Catholicism, and he fuses them to see what gold comes out. He's interested in the friction.
It keeps him from getting stale.
Yeah.
If you only write sad music, you get stuck. If you only write jazz, you get stuck. He's exploring ideas, not just genres. And it suggests that the universal truths he's looking for, like that cycle of Greek we talked about, apply everywhere. They apply in an ancient temple, in a cathedral, and hey, they probably apply in a Martian colony too.
Grief is universal. Gravity is universal.
Exactly. He's chasing those universals through every genre he can get his hands on.
So what's the takeaway here? We've looked at the impossible notes, the koan, we've survived the storm of dissonance, we've seen the tree grow from the seed.
I think the big lesson is that grief, and really any kind of learning or growth, is nonlinear. We are trained to think in straight lines, start to finish, problem to solution.
Steps 1 through 10, checklist complete.
Right. Peterson is showing us, through sound, that we move in circles, we return to where we started, but we are changed by the journey.
And that the scary parts, the storm, the sickness, that terrifying emptiness, they aren't mistakes in the process.
No, they are the mechanics. You can't have the tree as large as your embrace without the empty space to plant it in. You can't have the strength without the resistance of the storm.
It goes back to that paradox. If emptiness is the problem, how can it be the solution?
It challenges us to look at the silence in our own lives differently. Is the silence terrifying? Or is it simply space? Is it possible that the silence we fear is actually the soil where the rebuilding happens?
That is something to chew on. Next time you find yourself in a moment of silence or feeling a bit withered and dry, maybe remember that flute note. It might just be the start of the next loop.
And keep your ears open. Because if Peterson teaches us anything, it's that there are unexpected harmonies hidden everywhere, even between the most unlikely things.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for guiding us through the storm today.
Always a pleasure.
And to you listening, go find some unexpected harmonies today. Catch you on the next Deep Dive.